Have you ever wondered why some e-commerce brands are able to profitably scale to 8 and 9 figures while getting 30 to 40% of their total revenue from Klaviyo, while others struggle to get past 6 figures? Well, the truth is that recently I've seen so many brands scale to this size, which is 8 and 9 figures, and we've seen also their Klaviyo accounts being responsible for the percentage I mentioned, which is between 30 and 40% of their total revenue, all of that coming from emails. The main difference between those struggling to scale and those who are able to profitably grow every single month and every single week is optimizing their Klaviyo account. But the truth is that most of those brands have no idea what to test and how to run those tests to actually make results. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact breakdown of the exact steps that we have used for over 40 e-commerce brands that were responsible for making over $25 million in email sales alone in the last 2 years. So it's gonna cover everything you need to know from sign-up forms, flows, and campaigns. Let's get right into it. Now, before we get into the specific details of how to test and what to run, I want to cover the basics and the whole concept of testing your flows, emails, and campaigns. Overall, testing is key for constant improvement of the Klaviyo account performance. It's as simple as that. Ideally, you want to be running new tests every single month or every 2 weeks, depending on the impressions you're getting and the amount of volume that you have for every single email in your flow. Each test should also have hypothesis before it's launched or before you said it run. It means that we need to know what we are testing, why, and what is the expected outcome. I know that these might sound like super simple tips that you need to know what you're testing, why, and what do you want to get. But so many brands just blindly launch the test without even thinking what is the outcome that they expect. So if let's say your open rate is low and you're trying to improve it, you will obviously launch let's say subject line test, which would just take you to higher open rate, possibly if you improve your open rates and subject lines and so on and so on. A lot of brands will feel like, okay, our open rate is low, so we're gonna do something else. And then they don't know what the expected outcome should be. Then they don't know how to analyze the data, and the whole A/B testing process is a mess. Now, there are 3 different areas that we can run tests in. It's gonna be sign-up forms, flows, and campaigns. I know you could do some micro testing, for segments and so on, but usually these 3 areas are going to be responsible for the majority of the incremental improvements, and they're going to give you the best results in the long run. Each of those areas above will have different tests that we can run, so I want to cover them one by one and show you exactly what you should be testing. One important thing is that I'm also going to show you the exact examples for those tests that you'll be able to copy and paste. They're all going to be included in the document, so if you want to get it and just copy paste those tests, there's going to be a link below this video where you can download this whole guide that you're seeing on the screen right now. Now let's start with sign-up forms. So the main goal of testing sign-up forms is to improve the submission rate, okay? We can also test for things like higher subscriber to customer conversion rate and so on, but overall, the primary goal is to get more subscribers or more high quality subscribers. Plus Klaviyo breakdown also allows us to see the engagement for every single step. So we can optimize for that too. But again, the primary goal overall is to make more sales. But with the sign-up form, the goal will be to either get more subscribers or more high quality subscribers, okay, or higher quality subscribers. So what it means is that you can have an offer which doesn't collect zero-party data, and you would be running this offer, very enticing offer, very nice, and a lot of people would come in, let's say giveaway. This would be optimizing for the amount of new subscribers, for the number of new people signing up. That's because usually those subscribers aren't the highest quality, but then you're getting so much volume that it still might be worth it for you to run this offer. If you would like, for example, to optimize for less subscribers but higher quality, you would add some questions that would collect zero-party data as well. So that could be, just asking them what kind of pet you have, or what is your struggle if you're selling supplements, what kind of clothing piece are you looking for? Same goes with jewelry, are you looking for bracelets, earrings, maybe what style? You could also run a longer quiz, but the whole idea is that you will be asking them more questions to qualify them more, get more data about them. But if they complete all of that, then you can be sure that they are very high quality subscribers. So we can also see some of the test ideas that you could run. The first one is an offer. Then, and also like another important thing is that these tests are ranked from the one that we usually like to run first to the one that we like to run the least. Okay, so the priority is top to bottom. Like if you want to have the biggest ROI tests run first, then start from the top ones, which is gonna be the offer, then the regular offer versus mystery offer. So let's say you have tested, percentage off versus dollar amount of. Let's say 10% off one, then you want to A/B test this winning offer against mystery offer. I know that mystery offer doesn't sound too promising, but trust me, we have run a few of those tests and the results have been very nice, both in terms of the submission rate. So we were getting more subscribers. And we thought that, okay, maybe, we'll sacrifice the quality and our revenue per recipient in the welcome flow will go down. But that wasn't true. The revenue in the welcome flow actually went up, the revenue per recipient, I mean. So that was win-win on both ends. That's why I really suggest running this if you haven't tried it yet. Another test would be multi-step versus single step. So, asking them for the email as the first step versus asking if they want a discount first and then asking for the email in the second step. Another test will be full screen design with plain color background versus more kind of like design-based pop-ups, which, look more fancy rather than simple. But again, this is also something you can run based on the target demographic and target audience. These can really perform completely differently. That's why you need to run both of them as well. Then you have discount code on the thank you page versus no discount code on the thank you page. So usually if you're using dynamic codes, you would need to run your pop-ups through Klaviyo. But if you're, using some static codes in some other app, then you can also display them on the thank you page of the pop-up. And what it will do is it will optimize for the subscriber to customer conversion rate, okay? Which means that the percentage of people who buy from you after they sign up will be higher. And usually this test is so low in the ladder, mainly because we still like to implement it in our initial variation. So we will test it later on, but after we launch our first pop-ups with the first offers, we would already have this discount code option on the thank you page of the pop-up, just to make sure that we are actually making more sales rather than just attributing the sales to the welcome flow. Ultimately, you want to grow as a brand and not just have nice numbers on the screen. Another test to run would be pop-up with reviews versus pop-up with no reviews. So as simple as that, social proof. And then you can go ahead and just play with some time delays. Once again, this is still an important test, but it's at the very end, mainly because we are launching our initial pop-up based on the customer behavior, your heat maps, all of this information. So the initial trigger is still decent, plus on desktop, it's still gonna be exit intent only. So with time delays, you would be really optimizing mainly for mobile, but still go ahead and test these time delays on desktop too. Now you might be wondering, okay, how long do I run these tests? So first of all, each test needs to have enough data for us in order to end it. If we don't have enough data and we will make a decision, we don't know if it's a reliable decision and we don't know if the test was conclusive. Otherwise, like if you don't collect enough data, the results could be random and there is no place for randomness when it comes to your e-com brand's performance. Now, what I would suggest is having at least 3 to 5k impressions per variation, or let it run for at least 15 days. If you're a smaller brand and you want to get this kind of impressions, very quickly, then of course it's gonna run for like a month or so and then you can end it. But if you're a bigger brand and you're getting 3 to 5k impressions per day, which is also something we have seen, and some of our clients have this amount of volume on their pop-ups, sometimes even more, then you want to let it run for at least 15 days. Like if you're getting 10k impressions in a day and you run the test for one day, it's just not enough data. That's why we're having to metric we're looking at. So it's either the length, like 15 days at least, or 3 to 5k impressions per variation. That's very important. Now let's cover flows. So this one is gonna be a little bit more complicated, and I'm gonna cover all of that in just a second. And once again, you're gonna see the exact tests we're gonna run. There's gonna be like 8 examples of subject line tests alone. So make sure you stick and watch this because you're gonna just have like the copy paste tests that you can do. Now, with both flows and campaigns, the goal is the same as with the sign-up forms, to make more sales. And sometimes that will be achieved by getting higher open rate, sometimes by improving your click rate. Overall, whenever running the tests, we need to keep in mind that the primary winning metric is revenue. So even if you're optimizing for better click rate or better open rate, ultimately you want to look at the revenue per variation and then make a decision. In some cases, you will need to ignore the revenue and focus on the primary metric we're trying to improve. Now, I know it might sound a little bit confusing, but I'm just going to explain it right now, so hold on. So when you're testing subject lines or open rates, trying to optimize them, you need to think if, could they have impact on making more sales, or do they just get the open and have a clickbait subject line? Because with subject lines, it's very tricky because a lot of people think that, okay, we're optimizing for open rates. So, if our variation A has higher open rate by 10%, but lower revenue by 20%, we should still select it because that means that once we select this winning variation, more people will open the emails and then the revenue won't really matter. It's not entirely true because you could have pre-framed a customer by using a specific subject line, like for example 10% off, or you could use something once again more clickbaity, which would be purely to get the open, which is like, RAN, which stands for reply, your question answered. I mean, this subject line is super clickbaity and you could probably get some complaints if you use something like that. So I don't entirely recommend it. It's a nice trick, but don't overuse it. But my point is that in the latter example, the revenue uplift most likely would come from having higher open rates, so more opens, rather than pre-framing the customers to sell them something. So this is why, once again, I said about the goal of the test and what is the metric we're optimizing for. This example is highly specific, and in 95% of the cases, you will still optimize for the revenue. But again, this is something to keep in mind, that a lot of people think that subject lines are only about open rates, but they can also pre-frame the customer, because if you open an email with the subject line being your question answered, you're expecting some kind of like, we asked a question, you had a problem, you got it answered, your problem is solved. But if you open an email saying 10% of your order, then you're opening the email with mind, okay, it's on a discount, maybe I'm gonna buy it, I'm gonna see. So you see how the mind is like acting differently based on what people read and what they clicked. Their actions taken later on will be different as well. So once again, I know that this might be complicated, but something to keep in mind when running those tests, because it's gonna be very, very important. As I said before, the above was a highly specific example, and still in 95% of the cases, revenue will be the determining metric that decides which variation performed better. Now, this is where I'm giving you the exact copy and paste tests for your brand, so let's get into it. The first one is going to be subject lines, and there's really a lot of variations of subject lines that you can run for your brand. And I think all of these really matter based on, once again, your target audience, customer profile, demographics, how old they are. Probably, younger demographic will respond better to emoji, while the older one just to, plain subject lines. Okay, so with emoji, without emoji, this is one subject line to test. Another one is bold statement versus question. So for example, if you're, selling air purifiers and you're promoting your USPs, you could say bold statement like, here's why we are #1 best-selling air purifier brand. And you could also add in the US to make it even more specific. Very bold statement, if someone is looking for air purifier specifically, they want to get the best one. They don't want the second one, they don't want the third one, they want the best, okay? But then you could also make it like more question-based subject lines, like wondering which air purifier brand to choose, which is again like more open-ended thing where we're kind of inserting like, hey, if you're wondering what to choose, this email is going to help you. And then, for example, they open the email and see the comparison of your brand versus competitors, which clearly indicates and like directly tells them like, hey, we are better. Then you could also include specific numbers or no numbers at all. So the example would be 4,922 reasons to try our lipstick, or no numbers could be thousands of customers trust this lipstick. Then you have urgency or no urgency. So for urgency, it could be something like only 24 hours left for 10% off. Where for no urgency, it could be how about 10% off product X. So how about 10% your lipstick, right? Stuff like that. Then you can have offer in the subject line versus offer in the preview text. And this is a very impactful test that we're usually running. So you can for sure test it. The example would be with the subject line, welcome to Tesla, 10% off your car inside. Or you could switch the places of those and, make your preview text your subject line and make your subject line your preview text. And this really can have a huge impact on the sales, especially when you test it for the first email in your welcome flow. So if you haven't run this test before, make sure you do it. Then let's continue with the flows. So it's gonna be time delay. So short time delay versus long time delay. Here's an example. So we would have 12-hour delays between each of the emails in the welcome flow or in any other flow. And then we would have 1 or 2 day time delays between each email in any of the flows. Then for the format, you can test plain text versus design based. For copy, you could test short versus long, branded versus more direct response. You can test multiple angles to see what works better. For design, you could be testing simple versus fancy design with collection links in the footer or without them, depending on how the email ends. You could test this as well. The current flow email versus top performing campaign promoting the same product. It's a very great test to run as well, because if you had a campaign that crushed it, there's no reason why you shouldn't run A/B test for your current email in the flow, because chances are it will be doing better in terms of the revenue than your current email. Now for call to actions, I know a lot of people say that call to actions don't matter or testing them is low ROI. I somewhat agree, but to an extent, because we've seen tests, even with the famous button color tests, that actually changing the button color from green to red improved our sales, but by 2x, and improved our click rate as well. So it wasn't only one metric, but both of them got improved by 2x for a specific email in the flow. So everything needs a context. That's why I said at the very beginning that you need to have a hypothesis, because we had hypotheses as to why red buttons specifically would work, and they did work. So even if someone tells you hey, don't test it, it doesn't matter, still try it. Even if I tell you don't test something, but you still have hypotheses as to why this new version or test could perform better, just run it. There's one reason to find out. So continuing to tests for call to actions could be buy now versus shop now versus something more encouraging, try a proven skincare solution. Shop now, which is the regular button, versus shop, the #1 US collagen brand. Once again, a little bit more USP or social proof. And then regular button colors or flashy or off-brand button colors. Once again, I know people are quite often laughing at this test or memeing it, but we've run this and it worked super well. So you can also try it for your brand too. And then the order of the emails, this is also very important to run, especially in your welcome flow, to kind of see which objections are more important to people or which are the bigger obstacle in them that prevents them from buying. So what you can do is have your social proof or reviews email sent as email number 4, or you can send it as email number 2, depending on what your brand is. I would still run this as an A/B test just to see what would perform better. Then you have guarantees email, so talking about your guarantees, removing any risk from the customer as email number 2, versus the same email, but instead of it being number 2, you could run it as number 4. So, using the example that I showed you right now, if your current structure would be reviews email number 4 and the guarantees email number 2, you would switch those places and just run them, do a split in Klaviyo 50-50, so it's equal, and then test them and see which one does better. Now, the order of testing, or the how to run the test or when to finish them. So the rule of thumb is quite similar as for pop-ups. I like to have either 3 to 5K recipients per variation, or test it for at least 2 weeks, maybe 1 month, okay? If it takes you more than 2 weeks to get this number of recipients, which is 3 to 5K per variation, very important, just finish the test faster. Ideally, you want to do it after 2 to 4 weeks. You don't want to extend for 3 months. Because if it's going to last 3 months, then you won't see any improvements month over month if you're running the same thing for entire quarter. That's why it's so important. You should also always analyze your flows and find the lowest hanging fruit first, and then select what type of test you want to run. I usually suggest starting with the time delays, because you need to run them once. So it will be this test, time delay short versus long. You run it at the very beginning, and then test order of the emails, subject lines, and the rest as you see need. So this is what we usually do when we onboard a new brand. We first of all set up the flows, and then we from the get-go right away launch the A/B test for time delays, because we have to do it once and it usually has the highest ROI. Then we would test the order of the emails. So this was the last test that I showed you, which would be this one, okay? And then we would test subject lines and then anything else. There was one test that I didn't show you because I didn't scroll down, but you also can test landing pages, which is collection page versus product page, homepage versus product page, and then product page versus, for example, landing page or advertorial or a listicle. So yeah, this would be about it for testing the flows. Now let's go into the campaigns. And once again, if you want to get this document with all of those tests, I mean, for the subject lines, you can pretty much copy paste them and just change the name of the product and run them as a test. There's gonna be a link below this video, so you can download it and copy and paste it as you need it, okay? Now campaigns are gonna be a little bit different, and I know a lot of people think that it should be the same as flows, but it's not really true. With campaigns, there would be a lot of tests that would like make some conclusive results, but you would still end up running both of the variations just for the sake of variety. And let me explain. So all flow emails are static in a way that the same sequence of 4 to 6 emails is being sent to subscribers, whereas with the campaigns, there's new content every single week and every single month. And what I mean by that is that if you have a flow that is, set and good to go, you most likely aren't, changing the design of this flow email 3 to 4 times a week, where with campaigns, you are, or at least you should be sending at least 3 to 4 campaigns per week. That's why with campaigns, it's really, important to have the variety of content. And that's why usually running tests like short copy versus long copy, plain text versus design-based emails does not make much sense, because you should be having all of these sent on a monthly basis. What I mean by that is, if you were to run, and we've done this before, and like I've seen it happen, and that's why I'm saying you shouldn't do it, because you'll just waste your time. But we have tested design-based emails versus plain texts. We have tested short copy versus longer copy. And depending on the angle of the email, in some cases, short copy would do better, in some long copy would do better. And what would happen is we would end up doing both of these anyways. So we would have emails with long copy, emails with short copy. We would have emails that are fully design-based and emails that are fully plain text, and we would always end up having both. Right now, we've also tested a lot, so we know what is the best combination for each of those. But again, we just have a variety of the content, so you can also mix them. So sometimes send short copy plain text email, sometimes send long copy plain text email, then short copy design-based one, long copy design-based one, and so on and so on. You get the point, just kind of mix and match type of thing. But with that being said, there are still tests that are absolutely worth running and tests that you should run for your brand. First test would be send time and date, okay? Once again, I suggest you start this as a first test just to figure out, when to send those emails, what time is best for your clients or customers. Like if we have a client whose target audience are, housewives, so for them we're sending the email later in the morning, like for example 11 a.m. But we have clients who are, busy moms. They were sending emails very late into the evening when their babies are asleep. So that's why you need to test it and figure it out. If you're not sure where to start, Klaviyo allows you to do an exploratory send for 24 hours, or you can just go to your Shopify dashboard, check daily sales, and where you have the biggest spikes. Most likely that's when your audience is most active. So you can go ahead and start testing this time versus second spike of the day, let's say 8 a.m. versus 7 p.m., stuff like that. Then you can also test email angles, landing pages, showing price of the product versus not showing it. It's very impactful. We've seen this a few times where showing the price makes sense, because even though we were getting less clicks, those clicks were qualified, because as you know, in e-commerce, quite often the biggest objection is price. And if we show them price in the email and they click anyways, they're very qualified and very likely to buy from us. That's why it might make sense. Then you also want to test dynamic product section using Klaviyo AI versus static products that you design yourself, and then subject lines, buttons, and footer with collection links or without them. Now, when it comes to campaigns, there are a few ways on how to run those tests. Klaviyo allows you to send a test to a part of your audience first, and then they're gonna send the winning variation to the rest of your target audience for this specific campaign. I personally prefer to send them as a 50-50 split, so I have more data, but also send them at my best send time instead of collecting the data for 2-3 hours, okay? What I mean with that is, let's say your best time to send, your winning time is 7 p.m. If you send an email at 7 p.m. and it will be collecting the data, for the next 3 hours to 10 p.m., the far majority of the audience, which is let's say 70, maybe 80%, would receive the email at 10 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. It's not optimal, because we know for a fact that 7 p.m. is our best time. So like running this test for 3 hours doesn't make sense because of that, and you can run it longer, like for 1 day, but usually I just prefer to do a 50-50 split and collect the data. Another reason is that quite often 2 to 3 hours is not enough, because some people might take longer to convert, some of them might be opening the email multiple times before clicking, and so on and so on. That's why I prefer to just launch the campaign A/B tests as 50-50 split and then analyze the data and implement the winning variations into our next campaigns. For your send time though, I suggest doing exploratory times, send times 2 to 3 times. You don't need to do it every single time. When you are trying to figure out it, you just need to do it once. Usually customer behavior doesn't change that often, so you can run like once per year, maybe once every 6 months, stuff like that. But then test the rest as you as you see fit or need improvement. And if you want to get more information about A/B tests or this exact document, there's gonna be a link below this video. Once again, you're gonna get access to all of this. But if you want to learn more, make sure that you subscribe to my email list, where I'm gonna be emailing you weekly with all of the information and all of the current strategies that we are using to scale our clients to 7 and 8 figures per month. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments down below. But other than that, subscribe to my email list and watch another video, which is gonna be recommended by YouTube. Cheers.